You are with the Strict and Beyond. Let's talk about partnerships and relationships through the lens of astrology and human design. We are with Kiril Goranov. Hello, Kiril. We can tell our viewers about our... This is a very essential topic for every single person. Everything in life, in general, is about connections and relationships. The form of partnership, whether it's the partnership with our mother and father, the partnership with our children, the partnership with our business partners, with our teachers, with our bosses, with our colleagues at work, everything in life, it's actually relationships. If a person can, so to speak, master their relationships in life, they have already succeeded in life.
Above all, I think that to a large extent, we must address the following question. When we have a form of partnership, it primarily helps us realize who we are. And it's important for a person to know themselves within the relationship, to be themselves, and this is a very important aspect. There are many people who, when entering certain relationships, become, victims of trying to please their partner enough and not being themselves in the relationship.
Yes, actually, many people lose themselves because they weren't themselves initially either. That's why the path to healthy relationships is, first, a healthy relationship with oneself. If you don't have a healthy relationship with yourself, you don't know yourself, and therefore you can't truly know your partner, whoever they may be. If you don't recognize this in your partners, you can't understand it. How can you understand it? There's no way you can have it.
For a special and harmonious relationship where you can be in synergy. There. It's very nice to have both energy and in reality, when we have a connection with one person, it means we have, as you said, different connections. Naturally, viewers will be interested to hear about relationships in a romantic context and so on. We can start from there by explaining that actually, when certain people meet, they never are.
Individually, two people actually create something out of order.
Yes, this is very important to address because in astrology we have several ways to examine relationships between people. One way, which is the most popularized, is the so-called synastry, related to the word synergy. We compile two people and how they influence each other, but this is not composite. It is very much the same way. In human design, we have synastry, how one person influences the other and how the other person influences the first one. The idea is that in synastry, which is classical astrology synastry, we see which themes a person opens in our horoscope. When we open the natal chart, there are 12 houses, each of different sizes. This naturally depends on the system being used. But if working with the so-called Maradona system, there can be wider and narrower houses, and each of these houses is connected to a specific sphere. We have a sphere related to the body, a sphere related to family, a sphere related to love, and a sphere related to friends and partnerships. One thing that is good to mention here is that astrology separates relationships and love connects. These are two different things because love is a prelude to a relationship. Yes, it can be a long period at the beginning of the relationship where there is a long period in which partners being in love allows them to feel the fun. The idea is that a person can learn how to stimulate this love and revive the relationship during times of crisis. Thanks to this house, which is called the fifth house, yes, the idea is that when one person meets another person, they interact with each other. They have interactions, and actually, if a man meets a woman, this woman illuminates a certain house for him with the following sun. It falls into the chart of...
But it's important to say that the partner must be compatible for the man. This is because it's clear that it needs to be mutual. It's impossible to ignite a relationship that is not compatible. That's not it, right? This is something that needs to be known. Perfect relationships don't exist. In fact, with one person, you might be compatible as a romantic partner, but not as a friend, and vice versa. And here lie many problems in most relationships. Actually, There is this illusion in society that when a person meets their soulmate, they will fill all their gaps, meaning they will fill all their lacks, meaning that your soulmate will be or be simultaneously your friend, parent, partner, and everything else, which is actually not possible. In reality, a partner will be compatible with you on several levels. Levels, but not on all of them. No one can ever fulfill every level for anyone.
That's true. The idea is that a woman, in some aspects, when viewed through a male perspective, if we believe in that, in reality, she activates certain themes. But also, when something is done now, a new one is pointed out afterward. It is essential to consider how the man plays his role in relation to this woman. And actually, there are cases where relationships can unfold in such a way that the woman may activate a zone for growth.
In the fifth house, it can be a zone for relationships, the seventh house, while the man, on the other hand, can activate the sphere related to career advancement, or may shine in the house of spiritual teachers. In other words, the partner can be her spiritual teacher, and on the same day, it is not about lessons, let's say. It is also very important to understand the role of each person in the relationship and to manage expectations, meaning that at the beginning, everyone has certain expectations in every relationship.
One is related to expectations in general, and interestingly, love is associated with the archetype of the moose. You know, many people thought that Venus is related to love, but it is not connected in this context. The relationships between people, love as a creative force, is associated with the archetype, and in a new meeting, it encounters the archetype of card 1, which is linked to expectations. Here, something very interesting is observed. We always have many expectations at the beginning of a relationship, and as time passes, some of these expectations start to fade.
Which allows building a relationship together. It's very good to see the other person, to understand who they are, what you can expect from them, and what you cannot expect from them, and most importantly, that it's not personal. Again, nothing is personal, it's not really personal, but in relationships, people often start to think that things are personal. This person is personally doing something against me? No, that is this person. That's just how they are. In general, they haven't changed because of you, they are generally like that, meaning the idea is for a person to fully see the other person outside of yourself and then actually enter into a relationship with them, understanding who they are.
Also, so that you don't have, unrealistic expectations. Well, yes, the idea is that when synastry is done, it's more about observing. The following thing is which zones are activated, and then the planets themselves are considered, right? The moons are taken into account, how they communicate, if I can put it that way. This is when there are aspects between the persons omitting, meaning there might be a lack of aspect. Then the sign position is observed, which is again very similar to an aspect. But in reality, Mercury is considered. In both partners, the Venuses, the things that Mercury likes, are looked at for communication. How does communication would work in a relationship? Venus is considered for common interests, for what both enjoy, and Mars is looked at for initiative. This is very much related to the relationship and attraction as well. In fact, synastry is quite a serious discipline in astrology, and enough time should always be dedicated to it. One must also look at both charts. You can't judge these people with just one glance and say, okay, I'm a Cancer, and my wife is a Capricorn. That's very bad. There's no such thing. There's no such situation. Even if you only look at the moon, there's still no such situation. Astrology requires fine work, in the sense that you need to see
any complexion, see, the same way. And Helen, for each of these systems, works with the complete chart. A young person, and I would say not a single one.
That there are no compatible people. Everyone can be compatible, but on different levels. And sometimes people start making sacrifices they are not ready for. Then in fact we call these relationships heavy relationships or lessons. The most important thing is whether the overbuilt or during the day, to see the person in front of you, what they can give you and what they cannot. In other words, what they cannot give you, you don't need to seek from them.
One, because in society we are looking for just one person to give us everything, which actually we are not designed that way. As I said at the beginning, there is no perfect relationship. Even if a person is with their soulmate, there will be parts of the relationship that are incompatible. Now, these incompatibilities won't hinder the relationship, but they are always present. In human design, what we work on when we look at it is to tune in. We look at the types of the two people. These are the four main types: generator, manifestor, projector, and reflector. We look at the centers, how one influences the other with each their own center, and if one is emotionally defined, the other is emotionally open. How the one with emotions influences the other with their open emotionality. In human design, since we have 9 centers, not all centers may be defined. Generally, it's rare to hear about having all centers defined. As far as I know, it's mostly rare in composites. We're not talking about synastry here, but the composite is the second way in which the data of a person is combined to create a third chart. 1 plus 1 equals 3 beings, which is the composite. What results when you combine them? Quality 1 combined with quality 2 gives you something different. You can combine a projector with a projector and end up with a manifestor or a manifesting generator.
This is actually what is created within the relationship itself. In other words, the relationship is the spool of education, creating a composition that is something entirely different, unlike synastry, which is the most classical method. We explained that in synastry you can see where and how the planets will communicate in the composite. It is actually a compilation of 2 charts. It works based on what are called midpoints. This means that it creates a new chart called a composite chart of the relationship, where each point is aligned based on the ascendant or the medium quelli, the highest point. What does that mean? Let's take, for example, one person who might be a Leo and the woman might be a Taurus. The sun will fall between these 2 signs in the composite chart. The sun will be either in Gemini or Cancer, depending on the exact degrees, and the sun will show how the man in this relationship will express himself. Uranus is also averaged. It is averaged, and a completely new chart is created, the so-called composite chart, based on which the actual relationships in the connection are seen. What will be the purpose of the relationship? Even diagnostics can be done on it to consider the future. What things will happen? There are prognostic methods that allow the evolution of the relationship to be examined in this way. So these are 2 methods with which we can completely objectively examine synastry, plus composite synastry is the overlay. And seeing the planets to planets, how they interact with each other, because the aspects are that means. This is how the planets communicate with each other. And then the positions are averaged, and there it already resembles a design map of the relationship in the same way. As far as I know, it is possible for centers to appear that are not defined. They will be called activations that can become active through the evolved human. In human design, they can have what is called an open emotional center. That is, when they are together, when they come together, they can define and have a defined emotional center. In the relationship, they might actually be very emotional, whereas generally they are not so much, let's say, and they are not so emotionally exploitative. For example, yes, that is a basic example. It's the same with the salt, let's say. But when 2 are together, their moon becomes much more watery and fiery, while generally they have earthy moons, and are not usually so expressive in their emotions. But when they are together, they start expressing their emotions much more impulsively, and so on. The relationship itself creates something, or third. The goal is to see what you become in a relationship. Many people say, I am not usually like this, but with him or her, I become like this. Because in fact, every single person comes into your life for a reason. Nothing is random, and nothing is by chance. When we call it random, it means we simply cannot understand why this person is there. Usually, a person understands why a particular partner has come into their life. Towards the end of the relationship, that's when the lesson is learned. It's also very important to say that
An astrologer or a designer cannot predict if a person is right for one person and not for another. This is a very common question, like, is this my person? Is this my woman, my partner?
it's impossible to say because of the simple reason that with 7 billion people on this planet, you have quite a few choices, but you are born with a purpose, and even if you travel, you will still meet the people you are meant to meet. The truth is that potentials exist and they always come correctly and as potentials for development, even if the relationship is not harmonious, even if the relationship is associated with some form of toxicity. Yes, this relationship can teach you certain lessons. Yes, this does not mean that it is not important. I would even say that these are the most important relationships. Where the solution lies is personal to you, meaning the tendency of people to leave the decision on
the astrologer or consultant to tell them whether this person is the cause for them. The decision is personal. What I can do is for the two systems to actually describe what are the qualities of the same qualities of the other, what one part needs from the other, and then the person can assess for themselves actually whether they agree with this or not.
It is literally an exact description of the relationship. It can explain where certain problems and challenges come from, like with your mother, and how they can be resolved. This is very, very valuable and strict. The film provides us with techniques that show how to play out certain aspects in the chart, which can lead to, want, stress, stagnation, and even forms of aggression. The issues are not visible. When a person deals with astrology and human design, they can see when someone uses energy at a lower level, and in this way, it can harm not only the partner, but also the people around them. And in such cases, it is very important to give the right advice in a way that the person will listen to you. These are very important things, because if a person wants to grow and hears these things, they can literally make a big change in weeks or months. That is, removing judgment means loving your partner, which means not only understanding who they are.
You judge to understand who they really are, falling into the system of understanding yourself, the other person, and then assessing, agreeing with things as they are. Ideally, in every relationship, there are periods when things go smoothly and periods when it's a bit more turbulent. One of the things we don't always realize is that relationships are designed to always have ends, conflicts, and not always. In other words, that's how we grow. Even if a person is with their soulmate, the relationship will always have conflicts and friction, which will lead to progress and development, and it won't be stagnant. It won't be a conflict that will be unresolvable when a person is with incompatible partners. Then actually conflicts tend to stagnate and people get stuck in them and cannot reach a resolution or progress.
Interestingly, in such relationship dynamics, the so-called heavier toxic relationships reach a point where one of the two, especially the one who is more oppressed, can even develop health problems. This is a kind of response to this type of energy attacks that come from the partner, because everything is energy, everything revolves around vibration, and every relationship, whether it's a romantic or even a business relationship, is influenced by this. They can activate certain areas in a horoscope, according to the person, can even speak about starting a healthy lifestyle. So this is something that many people don't understand, that they actually get sick because they suppress and keep silent about a common decision, which actually isn't right. The sum is actually a signal from the body to get you out of the relationship. And these are the types of patterns that are very interesting. They can be examined and considered ecologically. And a person, Avitatin, will always look for people, a partner, with whom they have and the opportunity to play out and clear the damages inflicted in childhood.
I also don't have it. Every partner is the right partner for a person at a certain stage in their life. They have two of us because they reflect something you have within yourself that you don't see. Also, partnerships are a reflection. partnerships astrologically associated with the seventh house, which is related to the shadow of the person, what you don't see in yourself, what you deny.
In reality, a partner can help you see which of your traits need to be, how should I say, cleansed of negative low manifestations. And every single relationship does this, even in the most harmonious ones. If we look at it this way, if a relationship, reflectively things just ignite and move very smoothly, everything happens as if people develop something. So a person is fundamentally structured.
To have solo development in these times, relationships are very dynamic. Currently, people can learn much more from a short relationship than they have learned over several lifetimes, even moving forward with it. At the moment, relationships are very, very dynamic, very transformative, and very much in the form of the body. So now is not the era where we learn a lot through partnerships and people are open. It's not much about awareness, and partly it presents itself in a difficult way. That is, in this era, a person often has to go through these so-called toxic relationships because there is such a tremendous amount of self-awareness. Truly. And a choice and freedom are given. You know, in the past, many people couldn't have this freedom. They had to stay in their families. They had to take responsibility. Because of societal traditions, they had to stay in relationships that weren't necessarily the relationships they wanted to stay in for the rest of their lives. Where is the situation now?
There are also many more divorces nowadays. If we look at it from the perspective of the time we live in, there are many more expenses than in the past. This is simply because we are not living as isolated around communication anymore. There is communication with a large number of people and social interaction, as well as urbanization, the large-scale organization, the influx of many people into cities, the so-called metropolises, create conditions and for better options, at first glance, which many people start, or is it hidden, or simply ends? The relationship starts another relationship. We have a much greater opportunity for parallel relationships. Yes, this has been a tremendous boom in recent years, and it's not because a person doesn't want to create another person, in a relationship, but because it's easier to start over. It's not about not swallowing the things you need to learn, but to start over. The downside is that in this cycle, you might keep repeating the same lesson with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 brotherly costs.
If a person doesn't reach the idea that the problem isn't actually with other people, but that there's something interesting with them, from family situations, I've noticed that these parallel relationships, the third person in the relationship, actually helps the couple in some way.
In a very fine way. He walked like a lion with so many courtesans, and actually, a large part of these courtesans have saved more marriages than psychologists and psychotherapists. Yes, he also knows that there is something given on an unconscious level.
And if both partners in the relationship agree for this third person to participate, he deserves it. In some way, it also serves both, even if on a superficial level it seems so.
This is very interesting, but it's about perspective. Yes, every single relationship has its difficulties, and we can quickly pinpoint where the problem comes from and provide a solution to it. Very often, the problem is a lack of communication. When we say lack of communication, we mean that people don't talk about their feelings. They might communicate and talk about whatever comes to mind and argue, but they need to reach what should be avoided. Actually, this is a form of lack of communication. True communication comes when a person is intimate with their partner, and the word intimacy should not be used. I would say that you should not associate it solely with sexuality, as intimacy is something entirely different. It is about being able to trust the person next to you. People actually do not distinguish between sexuality and intimacy. You can engage sexually with someone without being intimate with them. These are two unrelated things. It's about the physical drive, however you look at it. Actually, What do you want? We can create different types of content on the topic of compatibility from archetypes. If you're interested, write in the comments, and we can make such a video. That's all. From us for today, it was a pleasure. And until next time, thank you for your attention. Yes.